Another day and another investigation into allegations of MPs behaving badly. This time, an MP has been accused by a female colleague of watching porn on his phone in the Commons chamber. Another MP has apparently backed up the claims, and today also the Green Party MP Caroline Lucas has highlighted in PMQs that 56 MPs, which by the way is about 8% of them, have been investigated for sexual misconduct.
56 members of this House are under investigation for sexual misconduct, and that includes 3 of his cabinet ministers. The Prime Minister has just rightly said that there can be no place for sexism and misogyny in this House. So can he now confirm whether he considers that sexual harassment, apparently unlike bullying and lying, is grounds for dismissal under the Ministerial Code?
Of course, sexual harassment is intolerable, and it's quite right that members should now have a procedure by which they can bring that to the attention of the House authorities, and I think that's a good thing, and of course it's grounds for dismissal.
Oh, where do we even begin? Scarlett Maguire, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on this one.
Actually, I was completely shocked when it broke about the MP watching porn in the Commons. You just think anybody watching porn at work would be sacked, right? Any job, and here is a man who is watching it in the Commons thinking that he had a right to do it. So you don't understand why he's so obsessed with porn that he's doing it. You also don't understand why he's so stupid that a place that has cameras, has people looking over it, he does it. So there's that. But actually, there is a whole problem with sexual harassment and bullying in the Commons. And it is partly the entitlement of a lot of the MPs who feel they can get away with things. I mean, you know, David Warburton is being investigated. The Tories have cut him loose, quite rightly, and he said that he's got a lot of defences. I mean, you know, and then I'm afraid the Daily Mail did a story that this was a foreign power intervening because he'd been photoed with
But this isn't a new thing
cocaine.
unique to these collection of MPs. You know, sexual misconduct is something that's gone on for a long time. This is not like a new thing relating to this collection of MPs or this political party,
it's the kind of person that's attracted to the House of Commons. I mean, the kind of person is people who love power. I mean, that's fine. That's not a problem. But unfortunately, with some men, it does mainly seem to be with men, that they it sort of spills over into something less pleasant. And I think the key thing with this man was that he was watching porn, sitting next to a woman.
But we don't even know.
Clearly, he gets a kick out of making that woman feel uncomfortable. And I think this is true of many incidents.
See, this don't wash with me, and I'd be happy to be proved wrong on this. But I don't think, and maybe I'm going to have to eat my words, and if I'm wrong, I'll eat my words alive on Tube Thinker tomorrow. But, Gareth, it makes no sense to me, because you're in the House of Commons, there's people all around you, there's cameras everywhere. I just don't believe that someone would be such a moron that they're going to sit there proactively, deliberately watching porn. We live in an age now where I can Google an innocuous term on my phone now and be presented, as I've had happen to me frequently, by the way, on social media, what I would call quite hardcore porn. I've done it loads of times, innocently, looking at whatever research, and it's presented to me. And if you were sitting next to me, you'd be going, well, she's watching whatever. I haven't deliberately sought it out. It's there, it's presented to me, and I wish it hadn't have been. So we're all assuming and presuming guilt before we even know the details.
That's the really interesting thing for me, that we've got two guests here who have immediately assumed that this guy's guilty, that they know what's going on. And indeed, you know, in Harriet's case, you're saying, you're sort of giving us psychological insights into what's going on in this man's mind. You may well be right, but you could equally be wrong. Until the full facts of this have emerged, I think it's very, very premature, but certainly I think it's jumping the gun to say that there is a culture, a toxic culture in Westminster. If you look at some of the allegations that are being made, people saying, come on, girls, people saying, that's a nice dress you're wearing, and so on. If that represents toxic culture, then I think our understanding of what a toxic culture is wrong, not the fact that Westminster is somehow rife with sexism.
Hold on. I mean, those might be bad examples, but there are an awful lot of things that never got anywhere. I mean, I know for a fact somebody who didn't get into the Lords, a Labour person, that Jeremy Corbyn wanted to put into the Lords and was prevented because of the complaints about him, right, by a lot of women and how he made passes at them. As a friend of mine said, I wouldn't let a young woman in a corner with him. I mean, there are a lot of entitled MPs. Harriet is completely right. And that's why there's so much bullying there. It's not just the men.
It's not about sex, and it's not... I mean, I have to say, I mean, I've had... You know, a really happy life as a journalist. I've always had men being incredibly helpful, respectful, all of that. And the only unpleasant instant I have ever had was with an MP. And I remember the look of glee on his face afterwards, and it was that he was making me feel uncomfortable, that he was getting off on being able to do that to me. And that's, I'm afraid, what I think is happening so often in the House of Commons.
But these are all individual, isolated cases, and I don't deny that there are a lot of
cases.
Yes.
Across all the parties too.
I don't deny there are a lot of bad people in the world, or people who just aren't thinking through the consequences of their actions sometimes. I totally get that. But to immediately widen this out and say that this is something about the nature of politicians, it's something about the nature of power, it's a toxic atmosphere, it's a toxic culture, I think that cheapens what's going on in the House of Commons. And what really concerns me is as we enter this kind of economic crisis, and there's a war going on in which we are seriously involved in supplying arms. While all this is going on, we're talking about, you know, basic instincts. We're talking about people looking at porn, and I just think that's the worst part about it, that Westminster is behaving like a bunch of school kids when there's some really serious stuff going on.
That's what you said it.
Porn is a bunch of...
You said it. They are behaving like a bunch of school kids. That is the problem, right? Somebody told the Mail on Sunday, you know, that Angela Rayner, by crossing her legs, was distracting Boris Johnson.
And it was nonsense, but yet loads of people made hay of it and said, oh, this is a really terrible thing.
Yeah,
it's a scurrilous story.
A bad example. I totally agree with you about that.
Also, hey, sir, hey, miss, he was looking at porn. No, I wasn't. And, you know, OK, let's have an investigation.
Women who he was sitting... I mean, what upsets me, and clearly, if they were sitting next to him, they must be in his party. So look, these are not women with a grudge. They're actually saying
not necessarily.
One of their fellow MPs. They were sitting next to him.
Well, also, it came up at a Conservative Party women's meeting, right? I mean, and I'm not saying
what party it is.
I'm not saying for it is. I'm not saying for a second that it doesn't happen. The Labour Party, the SNP. Obviously, probably not the Greens, but actually, this it is a cultural problem, and that's why they've had to change the rules to try and make it possible, so that when you complain, you don't complain to your office manager who might be married to your boss, or certainly is that actually you can complain outside, and it's because of that toxic culture, and it's just there are example after example after example.
But also, sorry, if you're watching porn, you're not exactly taking part in the debates about, you know, the war, are you?
Do you know for a fact that this person was watching porn?
Of course we do. And this is the thing. So you talk about culture problems, Scarlett. I think that there's a couple of different cultural problems, actually. Point one is, I think, as a culture, we've lurched into this situation of presuming and assuming guilt. It always used to be innocent until proven guilty. Now, as a society, when it comes to things like this, you can have an allegation made against you. Gareth, you are a fine young man, but I could make an allegation. I'm sitting next to you. I could make an allegation against you quite easily. Sure. And what we tend to do in society now is, on the basis of an allegation, we want to almost destroy people. Before we've even waited for the facts, with cool, calm heads, we want to take their careers from them. We want to, you know, mark their name. We want them out of public kind of life. And I think that is wrong. So that's the first cultural problem, to your point, that I think we've got. The second cultural problem is we treat these MPs like they're some kind of celebrity. You know, they have their kind of radio shows, they go on reality, they go on I'm a Celebrity. Well, you're not a celebrity, thank you very much. You're a paid civil servant to represent your constituency, not to eat kangaroo bits and pieces on television. And I think it's a genuine problem in our culture.
I agree.
That we're turning these people into make-believe celebs. They then believe this hype, they think that there's something that they're not, and then around and around we go.
The person at the centre of this was elected by constituents to sit in the House of Commons. If, and that's a big if, it is proved that the allegations currently against whoever this is are correct, then it should be up to those constituents to decide whether that person leaves their job or not. That's how democracy works.
By the way, let's not forget former Home Secretary, was it Jackie Smith? She got into lots of trouble for putting porn films through on expenses.
It was her husband.
Yes.
Her husband was watching the porn. She also
She
made
claimed
it
on her
But that was
expenses.
at home. No, that's right. We paid for it.
We paid for it,
didn't we?
and it was wrong. And there was no question, it was wrong. It was her husband who was watching the porn.
Anyway, my
at
point
home.
is, this spans all parties. Anyway,
I think Harriet and I completely agree it spans all parties, what we're talking about. And actually, it's not just about sex, it's about entitlement. And I think that that's where you're absolutely right. And people get elected and then they think they're special. And there is an addiction in the House of Commons because you go there and you have people working for you. I mean, it's quite incredible, MPs, their egos.
Quite a lot of fever dreams going on here, I think.
I probably know a lot more than you do.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
But I do have to stick up for them as well, because, you know, we are talking about, was it 8% or whatever it is that's been investigated. So that means that by far and away, the vast majority of them are not being investigated for sexual misconduct. So, you know, let's be fair to them. It's not all of them that are under this dark cloud at the moment.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.